The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty Arizona territory as Samuel Crawford stepped out of his modest ranch house. At 45, Sam had weathered skin like old leather and eyes that constantly scanned the horizon. He had built his cattle ranch from nothing over the past 15 years, turning barren land into a thriving operation that supported his wife Martha and their 2 young children. The year was 1887, and tensions between settlers and the Apache tribes had been simmering for decades. Though many conflicts had officially ended, fear still lived in the hearts of ranchers scattered across the vast desert landscape. Sam had heard stories from neighboring ranchers about missing cattle and mysterious figures spotted near water sources. Whether these tales were truth or imagination born from isolation and worry, Sam couldn't say for certain. On this particular morning, Sam noticed something troubling. Several of his prize cattle were missing from the northern pasture. These weren't just any cattle. They were breeding stock worth months of income. His foreman, Joe Martinez, had discovered the missing animals during the dawn head count. Joe was a reliable man who had worked the land even longer than Sam, and his worried expression told Sam this wasn't a simple case of wandering livestock. "Boss, I found tracks leading toward Apache Rock," Joe said, removing his worn hat and wiping sweat from his forehead. "Looks like maybe 6 or 7 head were driven off during the night. The tracks are fresh, maybe 4 hours old." Sam felt his stomach tighten. Apache Rock was a towering red formation about 3 miles north of his property, known as a traditional gathering place for the local Apache bands. The area was technically open territory, but most ranchers avoided it out of respect and caution. If someone had indeed driven his cattle in that direction, it could mean serious trouble. Martha appeared in the doorway, her flour-dusted apron suggesting she had been preparing the morning bread. She had overheard the conversation, and her face showed the same concern that had become too familiar in recent months. "Sam, maybe we should contact the territorial marshal," she suggested quietly. This could be more than just missing cattle, but Sam was already moving toward the barn where he kept his Winchester rifle. His mind was racing with calculations about the financial loss and the implications of theft. Those cattle represented months of careful breeding and planning. Without them, his ability to expand the herd and provide for his family would be severely compromised. The nearest law enforcement was 2 days' ride away, and by then the trail would be cold. "I'm going to track them myself," Sam announced, checking his rifle and gathering supplies. "Joe, you stay here and keep watch over the rest of the herd. If I'm not back by sunset, then you can ride for the marshal." The decision felt right in the moment, driven by a mixture of practical necessity and the stubborn independence that had brought Sam this far in life. He had dealt with rustlers before, usually drifters passing through who thought a remote ranch would be an easy target. Most of the time, a show of determination and a well-maintained rifle were enough to recover stolen property and send thieves on their way. As Sam saddled his reliable horse Thunder, a sturdy bay mare with excellent tracking instincts, he tried to push away the nagging worry in his chest. The missing cattle were valuable, but more than that, allowing theft to go unpunished would invite more problems. Word traveled fast among the criminal element, and a rancher who didn't defend his property would soon find himself with no property to defend. The trail was indeed fresh and easy to follow across the sandy soil. Sam could see where the cattle had been driven at a steady pace, not rushed but deliberate. Whoever had taken them knew what they were doing and had planned the theft carefully. The tracks led straight toward Apache Rock, just as Joe had reported. As Thunder carried him across the familiar landscape, Sam reflected on the strange relationship between the settlers and the Apache in this region. Unlike other areas where open warfare had raged for years, this particular territory had maintained an uneasy peace. There had been no major incidents in over 2 years, and some Apache families even traded occasionally with the ranchers, exchanging handmade goods for supplies. But peace was a fragile thing, built on mutual respect and careful boundaries. If members of the tribe had indeed taken his cattle, it would represent a serious breakdown in those unspoken agreements. Sam hoped he would find some other explanation for the missing animals. Perhaps they had simply wandered off and the tracks were misleading. The sun climbed higher as Sam followed the trail, and soon he could see the distinctive red rocks of Apache Rock Formation rising from the desert floor. The area was known for its natural water sources and cave systems, making it an ideal place for both wildlife and people to gather. As he drew closer, Sam could see smoke rising from what appeared to be a small campfire. His heart began to beat faster as he realized he was approaching what might be a confrontation. Sam had never actually faced members of the Apache tribe in a hostile situation, and he wasn't sure what to expect. The stories he had heard from other ranchers were often exaggerated and contradictory, colored by fear and prejudice. Drawing his rifle from its saddle holster, Sam urged Thunder forward at a careful pace. He wanted to observe the situation before announcing his presence, hoping to understand what he was dealing with before taking any action. The missing cattle were somewhere ahead, and soon he would know who had taken them and why. The morning that had started with routine ranch work was about to become something much more significant, though Sam had no way of knowing just how dramatically his life and the lives of others were about to change forever. As Sam approached the Apache rock formation, he dismounted Thunder and tied her reins to a sturdy mesquite bush about 200 yards from the camp. The smoke he had seen was definitely coming from a small fire, and now he could make out several figures moving around what appeared to be a temporary shelter made from branches and animal hides. Moving carefully from rock to rock, Sam used the natural cover to get closer without being detected. His heart was pounding, but his hands remained steady on the Winchester. Through gaps in the red stone formations, he could see his missing cattle grazing peacefully near a natural water pool. Relief mixed with anger as he confirmed that his livestock had indeed been stolen. The camp appeared to house a small family group, an older man, a woman, and what looked like two younger people. They seemed to be preparing food over the fire, going about their morning routine without any apparent concern about pursuit. This casual behavior puzzled Sam. If they had stolen his cattle, why weren't they moving quickly to avoid capture? Sam positioned himself behind a large boulder that provided both concealment and a clear view of the camp. He needed to understand the situation better before taking action. Were these people actually thieves? Or was there some other explanation? The cattle appeared unharmed and were not being prepared for slaughter, which seemed strange if the goal had been simply to steal meat. As he watched, Sam noticed something that made him reconsider his assumptions. The older man in the camp was limping severely, and the woman appeared to be tending to some kind of injury on one of the younger people. This wasn't the behavior of confident cattle rustlers. These people seemed to be in distress, possibly using his cattle as a desperate source of sustenance. The moral complexity of the situation began to weigh on Sam's mind. If these were Apache people in genuine need, taking his cattle might have been an act of survival rather than simple theft. But regardless of their circumstances, Sam couldn't afford to lose his breeding stock. His own family's survival depended on those animals. Deciding that direct confrontation was the only way to resolve the situation, Sam stood up from behind the boulder and called out in a firm but not aggressive voice. "You there by the fire? Those are my cattle you've got there." The reaction in the camp was immediate and dramatic. The older man reached for what appeared to be an old rifle, while the woman quickly moved to shield the younger people. The injured person, whom Sam could now see, was a young man, perhaps 18 or 19 years old, tried to stand despite his obvious pain. "I'm not looking for trouble," Sam continued, keeping his own rifle visible but not directly aimed at anyone. "I just want my cattle back. We can work this out peacefully." The older Apache man, clearly the leader of the small group, responded in broken English mixed with his native language. From what Sam could understand, the man was explaining that they had found the cattle wandering and had been caring for them. Whether this was true or simply an attempt to avoid punishment, Sam couldn't determine. The young injured Apache man suddenly made an unexpected movement, reaching toward something near the fire. In the heightened tension of the moment, Sam's survival instincts took over. The movement appeared threatening. It could have been reaching for a weapon. Without conscious thought, Sam's finger found the trigger of his Winchester. The crack of the rifle shot echoed off the red rock walls like thunder. The young Apache man spun around from the impact and collapsed near the fire. The sound seemed to hang in the air forever, and in that terrible moment, Sam realized what he had done. Horror washed over Sam as he saw the young man writhing on the ground, clutching his shoulder where the bullet had struck. The older Apache man let out a cry of anguish and rushed to the wounded youth's side, while the woman began what sounded like prayers or chants in their native language. Sam's rifle felt impossibly heavy in his hands as the reality of the situation crashed down upon him. He had shot an unarmed young man who had likely been reaching for nothing more threatening than a piece of food or medicine. The threatening movement that had triggered his response was probably just the natural reaction of someone in pain, trying to help himself. "Oh God, what have I done?" Sam whispered to himself, his voice barely audible over the sounds of distress coming from the Apache camp. The young man he had shot was clearly in severe pain, but appeared to be conscious, which gave Sam a small measure of relief that he hadn't committed murder. The older Apache man looked up at Sam with eyes filled with a mixture of rage, grief, and something else, disappointment. He spoke rapidly in Apache, then switched to English. "Why you shoot?"
"He no have weapon."
"He just boy hurt already." Sam's hands began to shake as the full weight of his mistake became clear. This young man had already been injured, possibly seriously, and Sam had added to his suffering with an act of paranoid violence. The family had been caring for someone who was already in need of help, and Sam had responded to their vulnerability with gunfire. Dropping his rifle and raising his hands, Sam slowly approached the camp. "I'm sorry," he called out, though the words felt completely inadequate. "I thought he was reaching for a weapon. I made a terrible mistake." The woman looked at Sam with fierce protective anger, positioning herself between him and the wounded young man while continuing to speak rapidly in Apache. Sam didn't need to understand the language to recognize that she was probably calling down curses on him and his family. As Sam got closer, he could see the extent of both the old and new injuries. The young man had clearly been hurt before the encounter. His leg appeared to be broken or severely sprained, and there were other signs of recent trauma. The bullet wound in his shoulder was bleeding steadily but didn't appear to have hit any vital organs. "Let me help," Sam said, pulling out a clean bandana from his pocket. "I know something about treating wounds. Please, let me try to fix what I've done." The older man studied Sam's face carefully, perhaps trying to determine whether this offer of help was genuine or another threat. After a long moment of consideration, he stepped aside slightly, allowing Sam to approach the wounded young man. This moment of tentative trust would prove to be the beginning of something none of them could have anticipated. Kneeling beside the wounded young Apache man, Sam felt the weight of responsibility settling heavily on his shoulders. The young man's dark eyes were filled with pain but showed no fear, which somehow made Sam feel even worse about what he had done. Up close, Sam could see that this was little more than a teenager, probably younger than his own nephew back in Missouri. "What's his name?" Sam asked the older man while carefully examining the bullet wound. The older Apache looked suspicious but eventually responded, "His name is Running Wolf. He is my grandson." Sam's heart sank further. He had shot someone's grandson, someone who was already hurt and vulnerable. As he cleaned the wound with water from his canteen, Sam noticed that Running Wolf's previous injuries were quite serious. His left leg was clearly broken and had been crudely splinted with branches and strips of hide. There were also cuts and bruises that suggested he had fallen from a considerable height. Working as gently as possible, Sam used his bandana and some strips torn from his shirt to create a proper bandage for the bullet wound. The young man winced but didn't cry out, displaying the kind of stoic courage that Sam had to admire. Throughout the process, the older man, who introduced himself as Gray Eagle, watched every move with intense scrutiny. "How did he get hurt before?" Sam asked while working on the bandage. Gray Eagle hesitated, then explained in his careful English that Running Wolf had fallen while trying to rescue a young horse that had become trapped on a cliff ledge. The boy had managed to save the animal but had injured himself badly in the process. This information made Sam feel even more ashamed. Running Wolf wasn't a cattle thief or a threat. He was a young man who had been hurt while performing an act of bravery and compassion. The family had probably taken the cattle out of desperate need, trying to provide food and resources while caring for their injured relative. As Sam finished bandaging the wound, he made a decision that would surprise everyone, including himself. "We need to get him to my ranch," he announced. "My wife Martha knows more about healing than I do, and we have better supplies there. He needs proper medical attention." Gray Eagle's eyes widened in surprise and suspicion. "Why you want help now? You shoot him, now you care?" Sam met the older man's gaze directly. "Because I made a terrible mistake and I want to make it right. Your grandson needs help that I can't give him here. My ranch has clean water, good food, and medicine. You can all come." The woman, who had been silent throughout the medical treatment, suddenly spoke up in rapid Apache. Gray Eagle listened, then shook his head and responded in the same language. Sam could tell they were debating whether to trust him, and he couldn't blame them for their hesitation. "Look," Sam said, "I know you have no reason to trust me after what I just did, but that boy needs help and I'm the one who made his situation worse. The least I can do is try to make it better." Running Wolf himself settled the debate by speaking weakly in English. "Grandfather, I need help. The pain is very bad." His voice was barely above a whisper, but his meaning was clear. Gray Eagle looked at his grandson with deep concern, then back at Sam. "If we come to your place, how we know you not bring soldiers? How we know this not trap?" Sam understood the fear behind the question. Apache people had good reason to be suspicious of white settlers' promises, given the long history of broken treaties and betrayals. "You have my word," Sam said simply. "I give you my word as a man who has made a terrible mistake and wants to make it right." After more discussion, in Apache between Gray Eagle and the woman, whom Sam learned was called Singing Bird and was Running Wolf's aunt, they agreed to accompany Sam to his ranch. The decision was clearly driven by necessity rather than trust, but it was a beginning. Getting Running Wolf onto Sam's horse proved to be a delicate operation. The young man was weak from pain and blood loss, and his broken leg made mounting extremely difficult. Eventually, they managed to get him positioned in front of Sam on Thunder's saddle, while Gray Eagle and Singing Bird followed on foot, driving the cattle that had started this whole incident. The journey back to Sam's ranch was slow and careful. Every step that Thunder took seemed to cause Running Wolf additional pain, despite Sam's efforts to ride as smoothly as possible. During the quiet moments of the ride, Sam found himself talking to the injured young man, partly to keep him conscious and partly to fill the heavy silence. "My ranch isn't much to look at," Sam said, "but my wife Martha is a good woman. She helped deliver most of the babies in this territory, and she's patched up more injuries than the town doctor. She'll take good care of you." Running Wolf didn't respond much, but Sam could tell he was listening. Occasionally, the young man would ask for water, which Sam provided from his canteen. The trust implicit in accepting water from the man who had shot him was not lost on Sam, and it made his determination to help even stronger. As they approached the ranch, Sam began to worry about how Martha and the children would react to his bringing 3 Apache people home, especially when one of them was wounded by Sam's own gun. The territory was full of prejudice and fear, and many settlers would consider his actions to be dangerous foolishness. But Sam had made his decision, and he was committed to seeing it through. Whatever the consequences might be, he was going to do everything in his power to help Running Wolf recover from both his original injuries and the wound that Sam had inflicted. When the ranch buildings came into view, Sam could see Martha hanging laundry behind the house. She looked up at the approaching group with curiosity that quickly turned to concern when she saw the injured young man slumped in front of Sam on the horse. Martha Crawford dropped the wet shirt she had been hanging and rushed toward the approaching group, her practical mind immediately assessing the situation. After 15 years of marriage, she could read her husband's face like a book, and what she saw there was a mixture of guilt, determination, and worry that told her something serious had happened. "Sam, what on earth?" she called out, her eyes taking in the injured young Apache man, the older man and woman following behind, and the returned cattle. "I made a mistake." "Martha," Sam said as he carefully dismounted while supporting Running Wolf. "A bad mistake. This young man needs help and we're going to give it to him." Martha's training as a frontier woman kicked in immediately. She had delivered babies during blizzards, treated gunshot wounds from hunting accidents, and nursed her neighbors through countless illnesses. The identity of the patient was less important than the obvious need for medical attention. "Bring him into the house," she said briskly, clearing a path toward the front door. "Joe," she called to the foreman, who had appeared from the barn, "help Mr. Crawford get this young man inside." The next few minutes were a flurry of activity as they carefully transported Running Wolf into the house and placed him on the bed in the spare room. Martha immediately began examining his injuries with practiced efficiency, while Gray Eagle and Singing Bird stood nearby, watching every move with protective vigilance. "This bullet wound is clean," Martha announced after her initial examination. "The bullet went straight through without hitting bone, but this leg is badly broken, and these other injuries look several days old." "What happened to him?" Sam explained the entire story while Martha worked, including his own role in creating the bullet wound. She listened without interruption, her face showing neither judgment nor surprise. Martha had long ago learned that frontier life was full of complicated situations that couldn't be solved with simple answers. "Well," she said when Sam finished his account, "what's done is done. Now we focus on getting him healed up." She turned to Gray Eagle and Singing Bird. "I'm going to need to reset that leg properly. It's going to hurt him quite a bit, but it's necessary if he's going to walk normally again." Gray Eagle translated for Singing Bird, who nodded and began speaking in Apache. "She says she has medicine plants that can help with pain," Gray Eagle told Martha. "She asks if she can prepare them." "Of course," Martha replied. "Any help would be appreciated. I'll show her to the kitchen." Over the next several hours, the Crawford Ranch house became an unlikely place of cooperation between two very different cultures. Martha and Singing Bird worked together to tend Running Wolf's injuries, communicating through gestures, simple English words, and the universal language of healing. Despite the language barrier, both women recognized each other's knowledge and skill. Sam's children, 8-year-old Emma and 6-year-old Tommy, watched the proceedings with wide-eyed curiosity. They had never seen Apache people before, and their natural childhood fascination overcame any fear their parents might have expected. Emma was particularly interested in Singing Bird's traditional clothing and jewelry, while Tommy was fascinated by Gray Eagle's stories about horses and hunting. The process of properly setting Running Wolf's broken leg was indeed painful, just as Martha had warned. The young man gritted his teeth and squeezed Gray Eagle's hand, but never cried out. The combination of Martha's medical knowledge and Singing Bird's traditional pain remedies helped manage the worst of the discomfort. By evening, Running Wolf was resting more comfortably in the spare room, his injuries properly cleaned and bandaged. The bullet wound had stopped bleeding, and his leg was now properly splinted and positioned for healing. Martha estimated that he would need at least 3 weeks of bed rest before he could even consider traveling. "He can stay here as long as necessary," Sam announced during the simple dinner that Martha had prepared for everyone. "It's the least I can do after what I did to him." Gray Eagle looked surprised by this offer. "You let us stay in your house for 3 weeks? Why you do this?" Sam struggled to find the right words to explain his motivations. "Where I come from, when you hurt someone by mistake, you try to make it right. I hurt your grandson, so I need to help him get better." The conversation during dinner revealed more about each family's circumstances. Gray Eagle explained that he, Singing Bird, and Running Wolf had been traveling to meet with other family members when Running Wolf's accident occurred. They had been camped near Apache Rock while deciding what to do about his injuries when they discovered Sam's cattle wandering nearby. "We no steal your cattle," Gray Eagle insisted. "We find them by water, no person watching. We think maybe they lost, so we keep them safe." Sam realized that his initial assumption about cattle theft had been completely wrong. The Apache family had actually been protecting his livestock, not stealing it. This revelation made him feel even more ashamed about his hasty action with the rifle. As the days passed, the unusual household settled into a routine. Martha and Singing Bird continued to work together on Running Wolf's medical care, sharing knowledge about healing herbs and wound treatment. The two women developed a mutual respect despite their cultural differences, recognizing each other's competence and dedication. Sam and Gray Eagle found common ground in their shared experience as men responsible for protecting and providing for their families. They spent long hours talking about ranching, hunting, and the challenges of raising children in a harsh environment. Gray Eagle shared knowledge about reading weather signs and finding water sources, while Sam taught him about cattle breeding and ranch management. The children provided an element of joy and normalcy to the situation. Emma and Tommy quickly became friends with Running Wolf, bringing him drawings and small gifts, and listening with fascination to Gray Eagle's stories about Apache traditions and legends. Running Wolf himself proved to be remarkably resilient and positive, despite his painful injuries. He was intelligent and curious, asking many questions about ranch life and showing genuine interest in learning English. His good-natured acceptance of his situation and his lack of anger towards Sam impressed everyone in the household. As the first week passed, Sam began to realize that this unexpected situation was changing all of them in ways he hadn't anticipated. Word traveled fast in the sparsely populated territory, and by the second week of the Apache family's stay at the Crawford Ranch, neighbors began arriving with a mixture of curiosity and concern. The first visitor was Bill Henderson, a neighboring rancher known for his loud opinions and quick temper. "Sam, what in blazes are you thinking?" Henderson demanded as he stood in the Crawfords' front yard, his voice carrying clearly through the open windows. "You got Apache living in your house with your wife and children? Have you lost your mind?" Sam met Henderson outside, not wanting the confrontation to disturb Running Wolf's recovery. "Bill, these are good people who needed help. The young man is hurt and we're helping him heal." "Good people?" Henderson's voice rose another notch. "Sam, they're Apache. They've been raiding settlements and stealing cattle for years. You're putting your whole family at risk and probably the rest of us too." The conversation attracted the attention of Gray Eagle, who appeared in the doorway despite Sam's efforts to keep the conflict outside. The older Apache man's presence only seemed to inflame Henderson's anger. "There's the proof right there." Henderson pointed at Gray Eagle. "They're probably scouting your place, learning your routines, figuring out how to come back and take everything you've got." Gray Eagle, who understood more English than he spoke, stepped forward with dignity. "I am guest in this man's house. He helped my grandson who is hurt. I do nothing bad to his family." Henderson's response was a string of racial slurs and threats that made Sam's face burn with embarrassment and anger. "That's enough, Bill," Sam said firmly. "You're not welcome here if you're going to talk like that. You're making a mistake that'll get people killed," Henderson warned as he stomped back to his horse. "Don't come crying to me when they slit your throats in the night." Similar confrontations occurred with other neighbors over the following days. Some visitors were merely curious, others were openly hostile, and a few were supportive of Sam's decision to help. The territorial marshal even made a visit, concerned about reports of Apache people living at a settler ranch. Marshal Davis was a fair-minded man who listened carefully to Sam's explanation of events. After speaking with all parties involved and examining Running Wolf's injuries, he concluded that no laws had been broken and no official action was necessary. "I admire what you're trying to do here, Sam," the marshal said privately, "but you need to be careful. There's a lot of bad feeling in this territory and some folks might decide to take matters into their own hands." The marshal's warning proved to be prescient. Late one night during the third week of the Apache family's stay, Sam was awakened by the sound of horses approaching the ranch. Looking out the window, he saw torches and realized that a group of armed men had surrounded his house. "Crawford," a voice called from the darkness. "Send those Apache out here and nobody gets hurt." Sam recognized the voice as belonging to Pete Morrison, a settler who had lost cattle to raiders the previous year and blamed all Apache people for his losses. Martha appeared at Sam's side, her face pale but determined. "What do we do?" she whispered. "We protect our guests," Sam replied, reaching for his rifle. "Go check on the children and stay away from the windows." Gray Eagle and Singing Bird had also been awakened by the commotion. Despite Sam's protests, Gray Eagle insisted on standing with him to face whatever was coming. "This trouble because of us," the older man said. "We face it together." From the bedroom where Running Wolf was recovering, the young man called out weakly, "Grandfather, do not let them take me. I'd rather die here than be taken by angry men." The standoff continued for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Sam called out to Morrison and his followers, trying to reason with them, explaining that the Apache family were guests who had done no harm to anyone. "They're Apache," Morrison shouted back. "That's harm enough. We know what their kind does to white families." "These people saved my cattle from wandering off," Sam called back. "The young man is badly hurt and needs medical care. They're under my protection." "Your protection don't mean nothing," another voice yelled from the darkness. "We're taking them and you can't stop us." At that moment, an unexpected voice joined the conversation. "Actually, I think he can stop you." Marshal Davis emerged from the shadows behind Morrison's group, his badge visible in the torchlight. "This is private property and these people are guests of the Crawford family. You men need to disperse immediately." Morrison spun around in surprise. "Marshal, these people are harboring hostile Apache. It's our right to protect ourselves." "What you're doing is trespassing and threatening law-abiding citizens," Davis replied calmly. "I've investigated this situation thoroughly, and there's no crime being committed here. Now I suggest you all go home before I start arresting people for disturbing the peace." The presence of law enforcement deflated the vigilante spirit of Morrison's group. After some grumbling and threats about what happens when the marshal ain't around, the men gradually dispersed into the night. "Marshal, Davis approached the house and was invited, inside by a grateful Sam. I had a feeling something like this might happen, the marshal explained. I've been keeping an eye on the situation. The incident had a profound effect on everyone in the household. Running Wolf, despite his injuries, insisted on contributing to the family's defense by helping to watch for trouble from his bedroom window. Gray Eagle and Singing Bird both expressed their gratitude for the protection they had been given, even in the face of danger. You risk much for people you not know long, Gray Eagle told Sam the next morning. This show what kind of man you are inside your heart. Martha, too, had been changed by the experience. I've lived on this frontier for 15 years, she told Singing Bird through gestures and simple words. And I've never been prouder of my husband than I was last night. The crisis had brought the two families closer together, creating bonds of mutual respect and protection that went far beyond simple medical care. As Running Wolf's physical healing continued, the emotional healing between the families deepened as well. But the incident also made everyone aware that their time together was limited. The hostility of some neighbors made it clear that the Apache family's continued presence at the ranch could endanger everyone involved. As Running Wolf's recovery entered its 4th week, it became clear that he was healing remarkably well. The bullet wound had closed cleanly without infection, and his broken leg was mending properly thanks to Martha's careful attention and Singing Bird's traditional remedies. The young man was now able to move around with the help of crutches that Sam had fashioned from sturdy oak branches. But the success of the medical treatment was overshadowed by the growing tension in the community. More neighbors had begun to express their displeasure with the Crawford family's decision to harbor Apache guests, and several incidents of property damage had occurred on nearby ranches. Though no direct connection to the Crawford situation could be proven, the message was clear. I think it's time for us to leave, Gray Eagle told Sam one evening as they sat on the front porch watching the sunset. We bring trouble to your family, and this not fair to you. Sam had been dreading this conversation, but he knew it was inevitable. Where will you go? Running Wolf isn't strong enough for long travel yet. He's stronger than he was, Gray Eagle replied. We find our people and they help us get to reservation where we supposed to be. Government say all Apache must live on reservation now. The word reservation hung in the air like a dark cloud. Sam had heard stories about the conditions on the Apache reservations: overcrowding, poor food, disease, and the crushing of traditional ways of life. The thought of these people who had become like family to him, being forced into such circumstances, made his heart heavy. Running Wolf himself settled the debate the next morning. I am strong enough to travel, he announced, demonstrating by walking across the room without his crutches, though Sam could see the effort it cost him. We have taken too much from your family already. Martha wiped her eyes with her apron. Over the past month, she had grown especially close to Singing Bird, learning about Apache traditions and sharing her own knowledge of frontier life. You haven't taken anything, she insisted. You've given us so much more than we've given you. The truth of Martha's words had become evident to Sam as well. The Apache family's presence had changed the Crawford household in profound ways. Emma and Tommy had learned about different cultures and ways of life, developing an appreciation for diversity that would serve them well in their future. Martha had gained new knowledge about healing and traditional medicine that would help her serve their community better. For Sam himself, the experience had been transformative. His initial act of violence had led to an education in compassion, responsibility, and the complexity of human relationships. He had learned to see beyond the prejudices and fears that had shaped his earlier thinking. I want to give you something before you go, Sam told Gray Eagle. Consider it payment for all you've taught me, and compensation for the wrong I did to your grandson. Sam led the Apache family to the corral where he kept his best horses. I want you to take Thunder, he said, indicating his prized mare. She's strong, reliable, and gentle. She'll serve you well wherever you're going. Gray Eagle's eyes widened in surprise. Thunder was obviously valuable, and the offer represented a significant sacrifice for a rancher.